Hello everyone, Nathan here, and about a year and a half ago I did a video looking at some of the most realistic and immersive games on the market, where I turned the hood off and experienced them in all their glory. Since then, two things have changed. One, some incredible looking new games have come out, and two, I now have a PC that's able to max them out on full settings, having moved from a GTX 970 to a GTX 1080. So today, I want to have a look at some of those games that have really pushed the boundaries in terms of graphics, turn off the heads-up display, and get into some immersive gaming. And we're going to start today with Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. This game from devs Ninja Theory is a third-person psychological adventure game, and to say that this game looks excellent is an understatement. There's passages in Hellblade that could easily pass as a movie, and at times watching this footage back, I was convinced I was watching a cutscene, only to then realise that no, this is gameplay. Now, this is a bit of a weird one because in all of the other games in this video, I've had to turn the HUD off to get a truly immersive experience. In Hellblade though, there is no HUD. This is the experience the devs wanted you to have. They wanted you to be fully immersed. Now, I've said in the past that I think the main problem that third-person games have in looking fantastic is often character models, since there's always one on the screen. But in this case, the main character, Senua, is the crowning glory of this game. She looks incredible. Her face is perfectly rendered to look real, and the animations are superb. And I was particularly impressed with the way her hair looks, with even small strands that have separated from the rest being visible. This achievement is all the more impressive when you realise that Hellblade was made by an independent studio, with a fraction of the resources of most AAA games. And those devs that made this know it looks great, even going as far as to include a photo mode into the game so that players can get those beautiful snaps they're after. Now, this one isn't for the faint of heart, and the fact that the game tries to make you question what's real and what's just in your imagination means that there are times when things get distorted and don't look so realistic. But even then, it remains incredibly immersive, especially when played with headphones on, as you'll hear voices in your head like Senua would as she deals with her psychosis. Honestly, this game looks incredible and is probably the most realistic looking third-person game available today. Next, we're on to something quite a bit more light and far less creepy, in the form of Forza Motorsport 7. Now, racing games have an easier time looking great because there's only a few assets that they really have to render well, and the rest of the world whizzes by at hundreds of miles an hour, so not many players will notice it. But Forza 7 stands out even among racing games as looking unbelievably good. Sometimes in racing games, small things let down the rest of the graphics, usually in the form of the crowd off in the distance or the mirrors that you'll see in the cockpit view, as those images aren't rendered as well as the front-facing view through the windscreen. But I really didn't find this to be a problem in Forza 7, and I honestly don't know where racing games go from here to look any more realistic than this. Now, this is the only game in this video that I managed to max out at 4K while maintaining a frame rate solidly above 60, and it's just so impressive what they've done here. Racing in third person looks great, but for the truly immersive experience, jump into first person, and it's about as close to driving one of these mega expensive supercars that you can get without winning the lottery. It all feels even more immersive when the rain starts pouring and lightning starts going off in the distance. And despite not really being into racing games personally, I found myself really enjoying my time with Forza 7 just because it looked so fantastic. Turning off the HUD was also relatively easy and didn't really make the game that much harder to play. Sure, I'd have liked to have those arrows on the ground showing me the driving line and when to brake, but if you concentrate and make sensible decisions, it's not too difficult to make up for that. The only thing that I couldn't get off the screen, in fact, at least while running at 4K, is the tiny shadow play indicator. And I think this probably has something to do with the fact that this is a Microsoft Store app rather than a Steam game. Now, I will admit I actually used the demo of the game for this video, but I was incredibly impressed with Forza, and if I was into racing games, there's no question I'd be looking to pick this one up, especially if I had a racing wheel to really max out the immersion factor. Next, I went for Star Wars Battlefront 2, and say what you like about the gameplay and monetization with microtransactions of this one, that's not what this video is about, because this is undeniably a gorgeous looking game. Now, last time I did this style of video, I had a rule that was to not include games that have too much fictional or sci-fi stuff in them, because, well, how can laser cannons look real when they don't exist, right? Well, I'm happy to say I was wrong, and Battlefront 2 proves that. Looking realistic and being realistic are two very different things, and seeing lasers fly by my head and X-Wings taking off and flying about didn't make things feel less realistic and immersive to me, as they've been so perfectly realised and rendered in this game. Turning off the HUD in Battlefront 2 is honestly the way I would choose to play the game, at least in the campaign, since you don't want to be at a disadvantage in multiplayer. Although it should be said that the clearly differentiated uniforms do at least make it easy to tell in multiplayer who's a friend and who's an enemy. DICE obviously have seen that people might want to try this no HUD gameplay out though, as not only do they allow you to turn the HUD off completely, and very easily, there's also an option that allows you to turn the HUD off except for scopes, which means you can still aim and shoot easily while getting one of the best looking gaming experiences available today. The Frostbite engine that Battlefront 2 runs on has been refined over several years and different games, and is now capable of some truly stunning visuals, while being well optimized and giving good frame rates. And some of the scenes that you come across in the game are truly awe-inspiring, with some of the best spark and flame effects I've ever seen. I mean, I stood looking at this downed ATST on Endor for a good minute, just because it looked so perfect sat there. Now, this is another game that's playable in both third and first person, and while the third person mode still looks great, if you're looking for a truly immersive experience, throw the game into first person, crank up the graphics and enjoy. One thing I will say though is that this is a game I struggled most with to understand what I was supposed to be doing without the HUD, as often levels are sprawling with several different paths and it's not exactly clear where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do without an objective marker. Especially when your objective happens to be something like hack into a specific panel in this huge room, and that happens quite a lot. Without a HUD, it's not the easiest. But in the moments where you're engaged in a gunfight with the enemy or just taking in the gorgeous levels, it's an incredibly immersive game. Moving on, I really questioned including Destiny 2 because it feels slightly stylized rather than realistic a lot of the time, but I thought I'd get in and see what the game looked like without the HUD on, and when I saw it, I just had to include it. Some of the environments in Destiny 2 are just gorgeous, and the freedom of being able to make alien environments with unusual colour palettes and weird objects littering the map has allowed Bungie to make a game that looks distinctive while also allowing for that high level of immersion that I was looking for. And I think when you take into account that these are alien planets, it makes it a lot easier to say that this game could look realistic, especially when you jump down to Earth and it does look a lot like Earth. Alongside that, the graphical effects included from guns being fired, explosions going off, and enemies blowing up really add to the look of the game and can pop a lot more when there's no HUD blocking them. I also want to give a mention to some of the skyboxes in this game, which look incredible. It's something a lot of games neglect in favour of concentrating on assets that the player will look at and notice more often, but Bungie, both in Destiny 2 and the original Destiny, adds so much to the realism of the game's graphics with these excellent skyboxes. The effect isn't as good in some of the locations as it is in others, and I honestly never really liked some of the less alien looking areas in the game, but certain specific locations look stunning, and I'm so glad that Destiny 2 was ported to PC and I can max out the graphics like I never could if it had only remained on console like the original. Now, yet again, as with Battlefront 2, this one has had its fair share of controversy, and despite initially enjoying the game, I was kind of turned off of it by some of that stuff. But I have to say that coming back and playing it without the heads-up display and experiencing these alien planets in an entirely new way was really enjoyable. The only real issue I noticed with having no HUD here was not being able to see my health, and that did lead to one or two unnecessary deaths. But overall, it was pretty easy to adapt. I did try playing this one at 4K fully maxed out, and I did get some sub 60 FPS frame rates, so if some of the footage looks a little bit choppy, I apologise for that. But when I lowered things to 2714 by 1526, bit of a weird resolution to remember that one, it got a lot smoother and still looked fantastic. And finally, as a bonus, I threw in some more Battlefield 1. I know this was in the last video too, but it remains one of the best looking games available right now, and the fact that it's based on real events and recognisable guns and maps gives it an even more realistic feeling. It seems to me that first person shooters lend themselves very well to a realistic look and immersive gameplay, since you can really put yourself in the shoes of the character more easily in a first person game. After all, it's how we view the world. There's not a camera hovering over each of our shoulders. Now this time I did play some multiplayer, but since I was finding it a little harder to do well since every other player had their minimaps and could immediately identify who was an enemy, and had other benefits like spotting that I didn't have, I switched over and played some of the single player campaign, and boy am I glad I did. It gave me more time to really take in the environments and enjoy the world around me. The single player version of the map Monte Grappa particularly impressed me with its lush greenery that just jumps out of the screen at you, and working your way up to the enemy fortified positions, you really get a good look at the foliage and details that DICE added in. I also played a bit of the Runner War story, and assaulting the beach was just as fun. When you factor in the destruction that the Battlefield games offer, it makes for a truly immersive experience with the HUD turned off. So that's about it for today. I intend to come back to this one at some stage later this year when a few more great looking games have released, since I really enjoy doing these videos, to see just how far gaming's come and to look at where it's going in the future. Of course, we need to remember that graphics don't make a great game. There's plenty of really good looking games that are terrible, and plenty of terrible looking games that are great. But nonetheless, it is definitely impressive when a game manages to wow me with its graphics. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments. Is gaming reaching a point of near realism, and what other games would you have picked? If you enjoyed the video, I'd be very appreciative if you'd click that like button down below, subscribe for more like this if you haven't already, and if you really like what I do on the channel, consider supporting me on Patreon so I can make even more videos. Thanks for watching, I've been Nathan, and I'll see you next time.